John Solomon. We were talking about the prosecutors at the embassy. Did she refuse visas to let these prosecutors come in and work with the DOJ?
So there were three waves of concerns expressed by Ukrainian authorities, including the prosecutors and other officials. May of 2018, then House Rules Committee Chairman Pete Sessions, a Republican from Texas, one of the most powerful chairmen in all of Congress at the time, he made a trip over to Ukraine. He came back and he wrote a letter to the brand new Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and said, I have heard some deeply troubling reports from both Ukrainians and Americans that our ambassador is bad-mouthing President Trump, and I think you should recall her. That was the first time that Ukrainians on the ground raised the concern that they saw the ambassador engaged in inappropriate behavior, interfering in investigations, that sort of stuff. A few months passed, nothing happened. So the Ukrainian prosecutors under Lutsenko, the career people, not Lutsenko, the political figure at the top, but career people downstream from him, they hired an American lawyer. This is in the October-November timeframe of 2018. They went out of the way. They hired a former U.S. attorney here in the United States, and they gave him a packet of information of things that they thought were going wrong. One was the ambassador was interfering in Ukrainian internal affairs, like telling us who we could prosecute, not prosecute. Two, that Joe Biden had fired a prosecutor who was investigating his son's company, Burisma. And three, there is some significant evidence, and there's about to be a court ruling in Ukraine. This is in the fall of 18. There's about to be a court ruling that Ukraine inappropriately interfered in the U.S. election in 2016. We'd like to get all this information to the Justice Department. That U.S. attorney, a Republican, reached out to the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York and provided that information. The reason they hired that U.S. attorney was that they had tried on their own to get visas to come to the United States, and the embassy was telling them they would not process the request. They were just sitting there unprocessed. So they wouldn't reject them, they wouldn't approve them. And so they were in limbo, and so they hired this lawyer to go provide that information to the U.S. attorney in New York. I confirmed with that U.S. attorney. He did, in fact, convey that information. He was, in fact, hired. They were, in fact, not getting their visas. So an American confirms this story from the Ukrainians.
Okay, so
and then we
go ahead.
Yeah. And then we fast forward. The third wave is when eventually Lutsenko, the boss of these career prosecutors in Ukraine, the Attorney General of Ukraine, they call him the Prosecutor General, he reaches out to me and agrees to do an interview, and he says on the record what had happened, both, confirming what Pete Sessions said, confirming what the prosecutors had done in the fall, and legitimately raising concerns, which is when we have a diplomat on our soil in Ukraine, their job is not to tell us what to do in our internal affairs. It's to make, deal with American policy, but not to tell us who we can and can't prosecute on our own soil. And so three waves over a year, all under President Trump, all efforts to get information to the United States that they thought was troubling, and all before Rudy Giuliani ever got on the ground in Ukraine.
So did we get those documents? Did that ever come, and whatever happened to it?
That's a great question. I spoke to the U.S. attorney, the lawyer who was hired. He says he did, in fact, give a general summary of what they had, and then offered to get them all the documents, all the underlying documents that would validate or confirm that summary. And the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York never responded with interest, never asked for the documents. Basically, it died with the first letter that was sent over. So it does not look like the U.S. Justice Department under Donald Trump was very interested in it, because they could have at least gotten the documents. So what did I do? I went and tried to get those documents, and I got many of them, like the letter I told you about, the do not prosecute letter, like the bank record showing how much Hunter Biden was paid. I went and got those myself, and I spent months and months validating them with sources, both on the American and U.S. side. And when I would have 2 or 3 sources saying that is an accurate document, yes, I can confirm that happened, then I proceeded in writing my stories.
All right. A Ukrainian lawmaker, who I've not heard about, has just announced that he has documents that Joe Biden was personally paid $900,000 for lobbying activities for Burisma. He claims the documents back this up. It seems like one of those things that is too good to be true. We don't know who this guy, I don't know who this guy is. Do you? And have you heard this? And is there any truth to this or possibility that it's true?
It's come up many times in my conversations with the Ukrainians. The problem for me as a reporter, and again, it's a sensational thing. It'd be a wonderful thing to report, and make famous if it were true, but it's not true, right? And here's how I know it's not true. I have the internal accounting registers of Burisma. I was able to get them from a source. They were validated by Burisma corporate officials. They show every transaction the company ever made. There is no transaction listed in that accounting ledger and in any of the financial books or any of the wires that I also been able to get showing a payment to Joe Biden. So I don't give much credence. That lawmaker is very closely aligned to Russia, so it could be Russian misinformation or propaganda. I will say many people have alleged that on the ground. There's a rumor that has long been on Ukraine, but I always stay in the form of what's in the fact. And what I can tell you is the amount of money that goes to Hunter Biden's company is a lot more than what Joe Biden and Hunter Biden say. If you look at the press reports of the last year, there's this number that keeps coming up that Hunter Biden only got $50,000 a month. Now, only is a lot of money. $50,000 is a lot of money, right? That's a big chunk of change. The problem with that account is that it greatly underestimates or it greatly diminishes how much money really was flowing to Hunter Biden and his company. I have put into the public domain the corporate records of Rosemont Seneca. How did I get them? I got them from the FBI in America. They had seized them in another case. I was able to obtain them from the court file. From the period of 2014 and 2015, you can see from May 2014 through the end of 2015, regular payments totaling more than $166,000 every month going to Rosemont Seneca from Burisma, usually in two payments, $83,333 twice. It's highly likely that those payments were one was for Hunter Biden and the other was for his business partner, Devin Archer, both who got put on the board. Now, that's unusual. One American company having two board members, it raises a question about independence of the board, right? But there's at least that much of money. Some months you can see as much as $220,000 going to Rosemont Seneca. Jeez. That is a lot more than $50,000.
Right.
We do not know what that money was for. It's marked in the ledger as consulting payments. So that would mean these board members were also paying themselves consulting fees. That is why the Ukrainians wanted this to be investigated in America, not under Ukrainian law. They wanted Americans to look at it and find out what was going on with the money.
All right. Tell me about Nancy Pelosi's son. He apparently was also, I think, a COO of an oil company over in Ukraine. Do you have anything on that?
I don't have much visibility on that. I've seen the reports. I think there's a much more interesting story emerging in the next few weeks. I would keep an eye in the next month on the Office of Special Counsel, not to be confused with Robert Mueller's Special Prosecutor's Office. This is a career office, and it's where whistleblowers traditionally go when they have evidence of wrongdoing. I am seeing pretty substantial evidence that the OSC has an ongoing investigation into multiple energy companies in Ukraine and the possibility that the Obama administration created erroneous records that allowed more money to flow to those energy companies than that they were entitled to get at the time. That case is still unwinding, but okay. I think we could see a lot of people involved in that case soon.